And again, welcome everyone to Monday night Air Baltimore Coalition meeting on zero waste in the community. And I'm Steph. I work with Energy Justice Network. We support Baltimore's frontline community living with incineration through the Clean Air Baltimore Coalition. And just to remind everyone to stay on mute, use the raise hand to alert us if you wish to speak. And again, everyone has been introducing themselves in the chat. Please continue to introduce yourself in the chat, where you're from, if you know your city council district. And in the interest of time, this will be a fast-paced presentation. And again, we are being recorded, so you can have access to it later. And hold your questions and comments till the end. But also, because I'd like to keep this to an hour, it is my hope that during the presentation that folks can connect with one another through the chat. So here's the agenda. Go ahead and get those intros in the chat like you've been doing. Thank you. And as folks continue to come in, feel free to introduce yourself to the group and add your comments in the chat as questions arise. If I do not acknowledge your question while live, I will do my best to follow up offline. Because I could speak on this for hours, and the problem is complex and nuanced. But I know the solution is not only possible, but necessary. There's no time to waste. So I have prepared a presentation on what is zero waste and why we need it. And I wanted to share what the conversations have been like with our city leaders and city agencies and give some examples of what zero waste is in the community, what you can do with a call to action. And I'll save the last 15 minutes for a brief open discussion. So please don't come off mute until the end or we're called on. All right, here we go. So the zero waste movement, like all movements, is one that takes collaboration. So it's my goal tonight to fan the flames of the zero waste movement. In the presentation, I'm looking at zero waste from the top down and bottom up. The real system change that takes us out of the failed take, make, waste status quo system over to a regenerative, self-sustaining circular system. When we meet in the middle, having a strong base of the zero waste community on the ground so that our leaders at the top have no choice but to meet our demands for zero waste and implement the policies and programs and invest in infrastructure that we need to facilitate this transition off of burning and burying, shifting to a circular zero waste economy and shifting from managing waste to managing resources. The problem with living with incineration is a long, cold history. I assume everyone on the problem is well aware of the ongoing battle to close the Baltimore incinerator, pictured here, where our trash is sent to burn, thus polluting the air we breathe for the last 37 years. This is a prime example of environmental racism and that it's located in a low-income, majority Black-brown community, contributing to the highest childhood asthma rates in the country. And then again, just a reminder to keep yourself on mute. And if you're just getting in, welcome. We've just started the presentation on zero waste, what it looks like in the community. All right, so Wheelabrator, or Bresco, is the trash incinerator. It's the largest stationary air polluter in the city. Ending incineration needs active community engagement and education on the issue so that we can be informed and make the necessary changes to save lives and the environment. So for all of these reasons why representing that Bresco Wheelabrator is the largest stationary air polluter in the city, this is why we need zero waste. So zero waste is the definition here, and it's taken from the Zero Waste International Alliance. And there's only one definition that frontline communities around the globe agree to. So ZWIA defines it as the conservation of all resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse, and recovery of products, packaging, and materials without burning and with no discharges to land, water, or air that threaten the environment or human health. So what does responsible production mean? It's acknowledging the harm that is done to people and the planet in the process of producing single-use items, and harm that's done to the planet during the extraction of elements like fossil fuel extraction and any other dirty or non-renewable source for energy needs and demands. What is responsible consumption? It's designing things for circularity and reuse so that we consume fewer single-use items. And it's important to be aware of all solutions like compostable single-use items, because those are not zero waste. What does reuse mean? It's the redesign of packaging and products for reuse. Nothing is designed or mass-produced for single use. What does the recovery of products, packaging, and materials mean? So this is to shift the financial responsibility of products and packaging away from consumers and local governments, like we have been doing, and shift it back to producers of these items like an EPR law would do. So what does without burning mean? It means no incineration. There are no examples of waste management that use methods of burning that are above 212 degrees Fahrenheit in the zero waste definition. So what are discharges to land, water, or air that threaten the environment or human health? This is considering the local impacts to public health when landfills contaminate groundwater, emit greenhouse gases, and incinerators pollute the air we breathe. Ultimately, these waste management systems in the take, make, waste linear system contribute to the global problem of climate change. So now I'm here today on the topic of zero waste for Baltimore, advocating for collaboration. So this is the puzzle we're working to solve, and it takes a multi-pronged approach. We need our community members at the base doing what they can to achieve zero waste. And we need that base to demand we invest in the infrastructure we need for the zero waste future to exist. So following the zero waste hierarchy, we can look at what zero waste solutions look like and why we need them. One example of zero waste is composting food scraps, and is the easiest to achieve without policy and it's located in the middle of the hierarchy. It's focused on the managing waste end. So we don't have to wait on the city and local government to divert waste from going to the incinerator, because we can do it in our backyards if we choose to, or drop off where available. But to make a significant change that supports all of Baltimore having access is expanding compost to curbside pickup, which takes investment in the local infrastructure. A complementary program would include Save As You Throw, which incentivizes the use of recycling and composting bins at curbside, minimizing what is discarded into the green curbside bin, as well as a citywide reuse site. This could be a first stop for residents to advertise a reusable item for free available to the community, like the Furniture Bank aims to do. They share resources that still have life in them because many times bulk items are still in good condition. Something that the city can do to recover materials that are still recyclable and compostable is to have a source separated recovery center, and anything that can't be reduced, reused, recycled would then end up at a biological treatment facility to be stabilized before going to landfill. In this example, residents are empowered to source separate. There are reuse systems in place, multiple ways to compost, and the tiny fraction of leftovers would make its way to the landfill, bypassing incineration, acknowledging that it's unacceptable to do so. And that's bringing us back to the biggest impact we can make, is identifying what is making its way to landfill and then redesign it for circularity. This is sustainably managing resources in the waste stream now and redesigning our consumption that eliminates the need to throw anything away. These systems exist already around the country, around the globe. It's not the future, it's now. So when the people lead, the leaders follow. So it is up to us to get these policies and programs implemented now. The triple bottom line needs to be incorporated into our economy. There's no profit without considering harm to people and planet, and the externalized cost to public health and harm to the planet must be accounted for. There's a huge opportunity for the generation of small businesses to accommodate our recycling and composting infrastructure needs. I know that Neil and Brenda from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance are here today and could further speak on that. And I'll ask for you to speak up on that more at the end of the presentation. Further making the economic and social impact of the triple bottom line, there's way more jobs available in reuse and remanufacturing, and really is the holy grail for job creating if we prioritize zero waste policies like deconstruction and expand our composting infrastructure to support local composting, especially since we have passed a state law that mandates if food waste generators are located within 30 miles of a composting facility, they have to participate, thus creating a demand for more investment in zero waste infrastructure like a composting facility. We're advocating for local control of the communities that have been most harmed. Adhering to the Fair Development Plan for zero waste would bring 1,800 jobs to Baltimore alone. So here's some examples of the local policies that we've been working on. Some of you may have attended one of our stakeholder meetings on deconstruction. So far, we've held 5 stakeholder meetings, still need to bring bigger developers to the table. And our local champion is Councilwoman Odette Ramos. Anticipated introduction of the Rebuild Act is next month in September. Jeff Carroll ran a deconstruction project with Humanum beginning in 2018. He's been hired again to train and develop the workforce. There's no better way to learn how to build a house than to take one down piece by piece. Here is the rebuildbemore.org website, where you can learn more about the bill here under the Rebuild Act. You can read more about the bill, and if you're ready to sign on to show your support, you can click on support to sign on to show that support. Here are examples of cities that deconstruct around the city, and I've highlighted some reuse businesses that are operating here in Baltimore. As you can see, Second Chance is on there. I know we got some folks from Second Chance here tonight, so thanks for coming. And this is the rebuildbemore.org website for all information about deconstruction and the Rebuild Act. All right, back to the presentation. Let's see, but before I move on, ask me about hosting a meeting for your group if you're interested in more on deconstruction. Earlier this year, we produced a fact sheet on the underground steam loop operated by Vicinity Energy. So Vicinity utilizes steam created from burning trash at Willebrator, and it's used to heat and cool buildings connected to the steam loop. Here's the link to our website where you can check out the fact sheet on the steam loop. So Baltimore City's Climate Action Plan, the Mayor's Transition Report, and Maryland's Climate Action Plan and the Maryland Climate Solutions Now Act of 2022 all urge for decarbonization. The best way to move building heating systems to a lower carbon footprint would be to end Vicinity's use of trash and gas burning and make sure that they transition to electric steam using wind or solar powered electricity. Given Willebrator's much higher emissions, ending Vicinity's use of steam from Willebrator would be the priority. Baltimore City is a customer of Vicinity and would encourage Vicinity to transition off of burnable fuels. The city could talk to Vicinity about what incentives they need to make electrification a priority and can leverage its market power as a customer as well. We've researched what can be done and know that Vicinity Energy in Boston is in the process of electrifying their steam loop. Thanks to leadership on the city council, introducing the BERDO law, which is the Building Emissions Reduction and Disclosure Ordinance. With the generation of this fact sheet, we're advocating for Baltimore to take the same leadership to make Vicinity electrify the steam loop. So we all have a part to play, whether we're able to shop local and adopt the reuse zero waste lifestyle, but to have a big impact at cutting emissions, we need system change. Local leaders don't see enough on the ground support, but in order for us to truly conserve and emit less, we need top-down solutions that change the system in which we consume resources, like a deconstruction policy and electrifying the steam loop. Zero waste policies and programs are striving to divert as much waste from the trash bin as possible. Zero waste business models look like items with no single-use packaging. Looking at what we can recycle, we do know that aluminum and glass are infinitely recyclable and also reusable in its same form. So I'm curious to see in the chat or a show of hands on next to your little face, how many of y'all have a glass jar collection that you're saving for reuse and store food leftovers, spices, or for refill at the grocery store. Because we can use them in its true form, the way that they are, without having to be destroyed to create new. That's why I'm really excited to talk about how aluminum and glass are always infinitely recyclable. Paper is recyclable and has a growing market. Ideally, it should be separated out from the other recycling so it doesn't get contaminated that's going to landfill, but not before stopping at the incinerator first. Plastics that actually have a resale value and can be reclaimed and actually turned into a new product are labeled number 1 and number 2. But have a limited amount of time, it can be recycled before it's downgraded and ultimately finds its way in the trash. And it's toxic all along the way of production, consumption, and disposal. So a program that would complement and encourage more participation in recycling and composting is a Save As You Throw program. Because research shows that by spurring shifts in consumption, local Save As You Throw programs improve waste management by encouraging everyone to generate less trash in the first place. So that's an example of something that could further improve our recycling and composting rates if we also have a Save As You Throw program in place. Something I want to look out for are some false solutions. And so false solutions look like single-use items of any kind, even if it's made of paper or compostable. So an example of that are straws and any other food items or foodware items that aren't actually food scraps. Compostables have been greenwashed and are a false solution and also toxic with forever chemicals known as PFAS. We've also been misled into believing that trash incineration is a solution to managing our waste. Instead of managing our waste, we need to shift to managing resources. Like it is crossed out here, it's not waste management, it's resource management. So reuse is the real solution. Redesign for circularity, products and packaging, keeping them in rotation out of landfills. Acknowledge the embodied carbon and externalized cost of the status quo. The current take, make, waste linear system is mismanaging our resources, and it's not our fault. We're into the 3rd generation of consumption, and it's what we've been taught to do as consumers of products. Our human experience of surviving on planet Earth has been unsustainable and cannot continue to exist for our continued survival, and there's no time to waste. We have to push back against false solutions. Federally, from the top down, the Build Back Better federal plan still includes false solutions like waste to energy, nuclear, clean hydrogen, carbon capture, and mineral mining. These are examples of greenwashed false solutions. Real solutions are for corporations like Coca-Cola to rethink, to redesign to reusable packaging. Restaurants and grocery stores can reduce their climate impact by switching to reusable containers on a deposit system as one example, all while saving money by eliminating the continuous need to buy single-use items for customers. Consumers can do what they can to use and bring their own through behavior change. Message me if you're interested in joining a local reuse coalition that's also in the process of forming locally in Baltimore. I want to talk about other things what you can do as an individual, as a resident in Baltimore City. So if you don't already compost and would like to start, you can support a local business that's doing the work today. Baltimore Compost Collective operates in South Baltimore. Marvin Hayes is the fiery, motivated, inspirational community leader on a mission to educate the community. Learn so you don't have to burn. Hire him to teach your community. He offers pickup services to local neighborhoods, and he's been diverting 1,200 pounds of food scraps into compost every week. Compost Cab will service your business for pickup. They will also pick up in your neighborhood. Connect with them. I believe Caleb is here today, and you can connect with him in the chat to start composting with them. Better and Compost is a great community partner to support if you're hosting and running a public event. They can support your composting needs. All right. So other examples about what you can do. I'm working on this petition right now, so I'm bringing it to you guys today in the community. So before I circulate this petition, I just wanted to get some feedback. So I've identified the powers are the mayor, the city council, the director of DPW. And so I'm looking for a thumbs up on this petition. So if you're in the room today, please comment in the chat if you have any feedback. And if you're watching the recording, you can email me, staff@energyjustice.net. I'll take a moment to gather some comments in the chat and I'll address them later when I open it up for open discussion. So let me know if this hits well, but as residents of Baltimore, we want to create jobs from reuse, recycling, composting, and deconstruction, including city-owned composting and recycling infrastructure. Incineration is the biggest polluter in the city, and we need a plan to end incineration as soon as possible without waiting for the contract to expire 9.5 years from now. We also need to call for we need funding. We need funding for the education, funding for the bins, and for incentives to facilitate better residential recycling and composting. Without any of these plans that I've just talked about, they don't go anywhere if our leaders are not allocating funds to make these programs and policies and invest in infrastructure to make this zero waste transition happen. All right, so next, I just want to put the call to action out there. I want to thank you so much for joining me on this Monday evening. And I'm looking for volunteers. I'm looking for volunteers everywhere. So I'm looking for volunteers to catalog all of the examples of zero waste businesses. I'm looking for volunteers to contribute to developing a composting map where opportunities exist for community members to engage. I'm looking for volunteers to circulate the petition once it's ready. So I just wanted to get some feedback, and then later this week, I will be generating a link to share to community members. And I'm looking for people that are here today on this call to help me share out and circulate that petition. All right, and then send us an email. Join our mini zero waste campaigns in Baltimore. And if you're not already following us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, please do so. All of our handles are the same @CleanAirBmore. We also have a Slack co-working space. So send me a message, staff@energyjustice.net, if you would like to join our Slack channel where I do the organizing with volunteers. All right, so that's it. I'm gonna stop sharing for now. That way I can see everyone. And then first, what I want to do is I want to invite Ashley to come off mute. So a brief introduction to Ashley, if not everyone's met her yet. So she's the fantastic community organizer from Village of Violetville community in South Baltimore. And I was really impressed with some of the work that she's been doing on zero waste in her community. I'll leave it at that and I'll let you tell your story from there. Ashley, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So, yeah, we had South Baltimore Community Land Trust reach out to do a presentation for our neighborhood group. And the way that we like to do things, like we don't really get much out of like people stopping into our meetings and just talking to us for a little while. So because we were kind of interested in it, we actually met with them over, I think, a couple months to kind of talk about like barriers to our participation in the city efforts to have composting, because there were 5 residential drop-off locations. And when we first started meeting together, I tried to go to the locations myself, and it was not accessible and it wasn't realistic for like some of my neighbors who are working and busy. And one of the things that I kept hearing from like other community associations was why didn't they have residential pickup in neighborhoods or at schools? And so basically we met with St. Agnes. We had funding from one of the Weaver Awards, and met with South Baltimore Community Land Trust folks. And I think I saw Toby on here. Toby met with us every week, and we kind of organically created this Violetville compost station. So, you know, 2 board members got together and built a sign. A former resident printed a giant sticker that had like, that was just like welcoming, and, you know, it's really loud and it's big. You guys I can put the, the location of it if anybody wants to drive by. But all of us were stressing the fact that like most of us are interested in doing more green things. Like we recognize climate change, but we also think that you should like meet people where they are. And just having the compost station is kind of like a conversation piece. You know, some of my neighbors that don't know anything about composting or would never want to create their own compost, it's a realistic model. So basically we have 6 bins. It's picked up by, I forget what the business is. What is it? It's whichever company the city uses for their compost pickup, but they come every Thursday, they pick it up and they take it. It's, you know, we have people in the neighborhood come and ask questions about like, oh, is it going to be an issue with rats and all that? And it's not. Like, it is very, it's I think the most realistic like model for people that are new to composting. And so far it's been pretty successful. And we didn't even really have to do that much outreach. Like, we haven't even really like pushed it. Like, we've talked about designing a brochure so that we can have a little brochure station at the compost station for like new folks that are just walking by and curious, so that they can get information about it. But ultimately, I think the takeaway for us is that it's more convenient to have it in neighborhoods, and also the city could really help a lot by providing funding, because now we have other neighborhoods that are trying to like recreate the same model. And I think it would be adorable. I don't know. Like, I'm really proud of like how it came out. We all created it together.
Yeah, I'm sharing screen now to show
Oh, there it is.
the
Yeah.
Instagram.
Yeah, if you go up a little bit, I just saw it.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at, so it's compost crew.
Yeah, and it's on
So
it's on my parking pad for the moment.
I love that. And your neighborhood is in South Baltimore.
Yeah,
And
South.
it's just you've got these 5 bins that get we picked up in your community. So awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that before I move on? No? Oh, sorry, I couldn't see your face. Okay, good. Thanks, Ashley, for coming and sharing like what you did to get composting started in your community. I feel like compost is kind of like the low-hanging fruit when it comes to zero waste. And like I said earlier in the presentation, I feel like it's the easiest thing that we can do without policy, because we can literally throw it in our backyards if we want to. And if we don't want to, we can take it to a nearby garden or a drop-off spot. Like, the city has that drop-off locations throughout the city right now. There's only 5 of them. So how can we expand that, and what does zero waste look like? And so I touched on some of those like higher up policies that people it doesn't really touch people's lives. Like, when I talk about Save As You Throw, that's a policy, that's a program that would help increase our recycling and composting rates. But that's not really something that your average community resident is going to know about. For example, that's why I was trying to break down what are these like bigger things. And I also kind of wanted to share what's been going on in the city. I'm sure everyone's aware that our mayor has committed to like zero waste. This is the last contract, but we don't have anything that's codifying that. There's nothing that's keeping that from him passing the buck to the next administration, especially since we have 9.5 years in our contract. We do know that the mayor only has 4 years of power at a time, assuming he continues to get reelected, but we want it codified. We want it written that protects us, that this is actually it. And we also are, he hired a DPW director from Oakland. Everyone's aware of Jason Mitchell. He's been here for a year now. They've been adding more staff to DPW that are zero waste. And they're in the process of hiring a zero waste manager as well to help them with this process to get these programs and policies implemented. So it's taking the right person to know what zero waste is. And in my conversations in the past, and that's why I went through that. I broke it out into many sections about what zero waste is and broke it down. And ultimately, it's without burning. So how do we live with an incinerator, but also move towards zero waste because it's not burning? So I wanted to yield the floor to either Brenda or Neil from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, because they've been studying the Waste to Wealth initiative for years, where it's advocating for all of the jobs. And we know that Baltimore needs opportunities and needs jobs, and that if we are investing in the infrastructure that brings in zero waste, that we would be giving more opportunities to folks in the community. So if either Brenda or Neil wanted to comment more on that, now's the time to come off mute.
Thanks,
Hey,
Steph,
Brenda.
for that nice intro. I see Neil's on I think Neil's on the phone. He's been the leader in kind of jobs through recycling and building deconstruction, and led our work with other Baltimore-based groups on the zero waste plan. So I don't know, Neil, if you want to come off mute. I've been focusing more, as some of you know, on composting. And I do think there are some important policy considerations, because really to be successful, it has to be as convenient as putting out your trash every week. So that's going to ultimately end up being curbside. However, I think what's going to be really critical for the city is not just assuming, oh, we need a 50-acre site somewhere and just go to a large-scale facility and collect it and take it out of Baltimore, or just go to the Jessup anaerobic digestion facility, which is already, I think, somewhat online now, maybe not full scale. So all of that valuable material is going to leave. If food scraps end up going to the anaerobic digestion facility, which is very large scale in Jessup, then those community assets are leaving the city rather than creating jobs. So we want more Marvin Hayes, we want more Violet Bills, you know, and we want more of the kind of compost crew, compost cab, veteran compost within Baltimore to create local jobs. I will say that the rodent issue, Steph, you mentioned it, that's what we always hear about, rodents and odors. The rodents are already here in Baltimore, and we just give them this buffet, right? Open dumpsters, open trash cans, overflowing trash cans. So when we begin to control our food scraps, then we can control the problem with the rodents in Baltimore. And we have a new guide coming up this month. It's August 1st already. So it's called Oh Rats, How to Avoid Rodents at Community Compost Sites. So we'll be sharing that with all of you or anybody who's interested. And we're available to help promote, you know, growing composting in Baltimore. I don't know, Neil, if you want to say a few words.
All right. Thank you for that contribution, Brenda. Thanks for coming. Your workshops are amazing. They are so informal and educational. And again, that's just, composting is just one of the many things that falls under zero waste. There are so many things that we can do as individuals, but there's also, I'm bringing the community together tonight to stay involved with me in this process as we advocate for more of those policies. And some more pushback I've been getting in the room with our communications with DPW is when he goes and meets people in the community, they're not saying, hey, we need more zero waste. Hey, we need more recycling. They're saying, hey, I need you to come pick up my trash more. So that's why I'm here to be like, I need my community. I need those numbers. You know, the saying from Ella Baker, the community organizer, who's your people? So I'm forming all of these people, and I'm gonna work on getting everyone engaged that wants to be engaged. Thanks to those in the chat that said they would help circulate the petition. Did everyone get a chance to read that over? Quick thumbs up from everyone if you're on screen. Awesome. Thanks for that support. I just wanted to get some feedback and make sure that I was hitting the mark before I started circulating it. So I'll go ahead and send that out to you folks. I've got everyone's emails that registered to attend today. Josie, is there anything else in the chat that you noticed needed to get my attention?
Not really. There was, Ashley had mentioned something about getting grants together, which I feel like you guys are already somewhat talking about. And Jen had mentioned that she would like to help with the composting map.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. Yeah, that's something that I wanted to uplift. Ash and I have been talking about, because right now what Ash did, as she told you, she got a grant to fund this community composting service for her neighborhood. And so looking for more funding opportunities that would sustain that and keep that going. So if anyone's got any good intel on local grants that would support a project like this. What was the initial grant you got? How much did you need to keep this funded for a year?
So we got one of the Weaver Awards. I think it was it $6,000? But I mean, it was for all types of community stuff.
Sure.
The compost station was just something that popped up. Like that's kind of how we like do stuff. We just
Right.
we're like
Oh
flexible.
yeah, I think you said it was $32 times 5. That's 160.
It's $149 a month.
Oh, 149 a month.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. So 149 times 12, we're talking about 1788 a year. So just under $2,000 a year. So a small grant, nothing too big. So if anyone knows of access to small grants like that, that's something also to send to Ashley, let her know. And then also for anyone on this call that wants to get community composting started in your neighborhood. And that's what the compost map aims to do. That project that I'm working on is mapping out where these gardens are, where these places are, where these people are like Ash that have the organizing capacity to start a program and keep it maintained. And it makes it a lot easier when you've got a crew like compost crew coming through to do it. All right, so are there any, I want to leave the last few minutes to open it up. So if there are any questions or any other opportunities for my zero waste community that has interest or questions to ask, I'm available. If there's anything else from the presentation that you had questions on, I can address those now. You've got your first hand up, Ash, so go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking like it may not be necessarily like zero waste, but is there anything y'all are working on with the planning department that creates like I guess like that are like green initiatives like in advance? Like for example, like the one that I'm thinking of is like, you know, when we get new development and things, like imagine if they incentivized like new buildings or things that have I guess like more sustainable like energy built into it, like into the construction, or you know, like we push a developer around here to plant pollinators instead of a bunch of rose bushes. So I think that there's like, I guess, room in the planning department policy to make that.
Yeah, I hear that. The only thing that makes me think of is back to like the uncovering the steam loop that we're talking about. So that is like a city initiative to take local action. And that's what would make it more sustainable for the whole city, to us to move off of this, oh, hi, to move off of, ultimately, we're looking for an end to incineration. Ending incineration is replacing it with zero waste policies. So it's kind of in the vein of that. It doesn't quite answer your question, but something that I took note of for sure. Jordan Taylor in the chat said have her give me a call. So I'll let y'all connect in the chat. I know Jordan is a developer with lots of great ideas. So I'm happy for y'all to connect here today. Yeah. That's great. And then, yeah, just to comment on the anaerobic digestion for anyone that may not be aware of that. So you've seen the inverted triangle I used today, the hierarchy of zero waste. So there's a hierarchy for a lot of things. And ultimately, we're advocating for the highest and best use. So anaerobic digestion does fit in the zero waste hierarchy, but it's lower down and less importance. We definitely want to prioritize composting over anaerobic digestion. But I can give a brief overview of anaerobic digestion. It's anaerobic versus aerobic. So right now, aerobic composting is what we're advocating for. Aerobic versus anaerobic is open to the air or not open to the air. And it just allows for more things to be added into it, into the breakdown of it. And there's a lot more of it. The end product is called soil amendment. And it also includes plastics and other compostables in anaerobic digestion. And those are things not necessarily great for growing food in. So if we're getting to the highest and best use, we want to have living soil, rich soil that's great for growing organic, nutritious food. And anaerobic digestion does something to that effect as far as keeping it out of landfill and incineration, but it's on the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to highest and best use. Thank you for that. There's more info in that in the chat. This is recorded and it will be uploaded to the our YouTube channel afterwards. I'll be sending the link to the recording. So thanks for coming, Michael. I'm glad you could make it. All right. Well, that was my presentation on zero waste, what the policies and programs are, what we're working on at the city level, what we're advocating for, and ultimately just here to build the base, to show the numbers, to show them who the people are as we continue advocating for more of this. So keep in touch. I assume everyone on this call today is on my email list. So I'll be following up with